Hello everyone, welcome to my channel English Literature with Sumi. So in this video I'm going to discuss about the age of Chaucer and the major writers of the age, the literary features of the age, and also the different works that these writers wrote during that period. So if you are new to my channel, don't forget to press the subscribe button and hit the bell icon to get the latest notifications. So let's get started. The age of Chaucer ranges from 1350 to 1400. So before discussing about the writers of the age, let me tell you about the historical background. So two great movements were taking place at that time. First is the Hundred Years' War and the second is the Peasants' Revolution. So the Hundred Years' War, it is political in nature and it reached its high climax during the reign of Edward III. It shows the growth of the national spirit, English national spirit, following the victories of Edward and Black Prince on French soil. So as a result, because of their victory, the French language lost its official prestige as a language, and English became the speech not only of the common people but of the courts and parliament as well. So English began to dominate the scene or the literary scene at that time. Then we come to the Peasants' Revolution. So it is a social movement and it falls largely within the reign of Edward's successor Richard II. This movement, it marks the growing discontent that was taking place between the idle wealthy classes and the overtaxed peasants. The peasants had to work hard also and they had to pay the taxes as well. Whereas on the other hand, the wealthy classes, they just sit and eat laboriously and enjoy their days. So that there was a discontent that was growing between these two classes, and as a result the peasants movement took place. Then apart from this, there are also other social and intellectual movements, not movements as such but events like the Black Death. The Black Death brings with it poverty and unrest and the growth of the spirit of enquiry. So with the coming of the Black Death, people began to question certain things that was taking place at that time. Now let us see the literary features of the age. So the standardizing of English which took place when French and English have amalgamated to form the standard English tongue attains its full expression in the works of Chaucer. So Chaucer made his great contribution towards English language by making it a standard English tongue at that period. So a curious note of modernity begins to be apparent at this period, with a sharper spirit of criticism, a more searching interest in man's affairs, etc. So a note of modernity was beginning to evolve at that time, and people started developing a spirit of criticism. The era, it saw the foundation of an English prose style. As English is becoming ripe for a prose style, Latin and French are losing their grip as popular prose mediums. So earlier, when English was not in the scene of or literary scene of the period, French and Latin, it was dominant as a prose style, and the writers used to write their works in either French or Latin. But when English came to the scene or literary scene of the period, it started becoming ripe for a prose style, and people or writers started writing their works in English. So after knowing about the historical background and the literary features of the age, now let us come to the major writers of the age. So there were 5 major writers of the age of Chaucer. They are William Langland. Firstly, voicing the social discontent among the upper class and the lower or the middle class. Then there is Wycliffe, a religious reformer, giving the gospel to the people in their own tongue. Then we have Gower, a scholar and literary man, criticizing the vigorous life. Then we have Mandeville, who was a traveler and romancing about life in his works. Then we have Chaucer, who was a scholar, a traveler, a businessman, who reflected life in literature. So as Chaucer is the most famous writer of the period, this age is known as the age of Chaucer. Now let us firstly know about Geoffrey Chaucer, one of the major writers of the age. So, the date of his birth is uncertain, but it is now generally accepted as being 1340. So, he was born in London, and when Richard II succeeded to the crown in 1377, Chaucer was confirmed in his offices and pensions, and shortly afterwards in 1378 he was sent for a diplomatic mission to Italy. So he was one of the first poets to be buried in Poets' Corner in Westminster Abbey. Let's discuss about the works of Chaucer. So the works of Chaucer can be divided into three classes corresponding to the three periods of his lives. However, as I have already told in my previous videos that for most of the writer's work, we cannot fix an exact date when it was written exactly. So the first period, this period includes the earliest of French group closely modeled upon French originals. And because of it is only a translation, its style is very clumsy and immature. So the best known, though not the best poem of the first period is Romaunt of the Rose, a translation. So Romaunt of the Rose was a translation from the French Roman de la Rose, the most popular poem of the Middle Ages. So it was a graceful but exceedingly tiresome allegory of the whole course of love. So though it is a graceful poem as such, but it is very tiresome because it has only the theme of love in it. Perhaps the best known poem of the period include the Book of Duchess, written in 1369 when John Conne's wife died. So Chaucer dedicated the Book of Duchess to John Conne's wife. Then other poems of this period include The Complaint unto Riot and ABC, The Complaint of Mars. Now let us come to the second period of Chaucer's work. The chief work of the second or the Italian period is Troilus and Cressida, which is a famous poem. The important source of the poem is Boccaccio's Il Filastrocco. So Chaucer derived the source of the poem of his poem Troilus and Cressida from Boccaccio's Il Filastrocco. Then another poem is The House of Fame, which is Chaucer's unfinished poems, but it has the rare combination of lofty thought and simple homely language. The third poem of the period is The Legend of Good Women. So other poems include Aeneida and Arcite, The Parliament of Fowls. Then we come to the third period, and which is one of the most important period in terms of the great works that he had written during this period. The third or English group contains his greatest accomplishment, which is the Canterbury Tales. The plan of the work is magnificent. It represents the wide sweep of English life by gathering a motley company together and letting each class of society tell its own favorite stories. Though this work, that is the Canterbury Tales, was never finished, Chaucer succeeded in his purpose of giving us a picture of contemporary English life. So I will try to give you a detailed description of the Canterbury Tales in my next videos. Then other short poems of the English period include The Lack of Steadfastness, Complaint of Chaucer to his Empty Purse, The Flower and the Leaf, and The Court of Love. So after knowing about the various works that Geoffrey Chaucer wrote, let us now see the prose style. So his two prose compositions are The Tale of Meliboeus and The Person's Tale. They are lifeless in style and full of tedious moralizings. The other prose work of Chaucer are an early translation of Pythias. Now features of his poetry. His works holds a unique position in the literature of his age. He has an acute faculty of observation. This faculty of observation is very prominent in his The Canterbury Tales. His success in description depends on vivacity and the way he presents his subjects. The humor of Chaucer is delightful and has great variety, and he as a writer is also a great storyteller. Chaucer imported the decasyllabic line from France and used it in both stanzaic and couplet forms. So Chaucer is the earliest of the great moderns. He is indeed a genius, and for nearly 200 years none dared claims equality with him. So his position is still there as a great writer of the age. So let us now discuss about the other four writers of the age. Firstly, William Langland, 1332. He was born on 1332, nearly 1332, but his date of death is not known. One of the earliest writers, he was the son of a poor freeman, and in his early life he lived in the fields as a shepherd. So as his father was also a freeman, he used to work as a shepherd in the fields. So his real life soon found a voice in Piers Plowman, the full title of which is The Vision of William Concerning Piers the Plowman. So it appeared in 1362 as a poem of 1800 lines. The poem tells us about the poet's vision on the Malvern Hills. So Piers Plowman, the poem Piers Plowman, it's actually a vision that William had while he was in Malvern Hills, and he could see the surrounding fields around him, and he could see the ploughmen working in the fields. So unlike Chaucer, he portrays vividly the terrible hardships of the poor peasant. So Chaucer, in his Canterbury Tales, we could see that he only described in details about the upper class, mostly about the upper class, but Langland, he used to portray the terrible hardships of the poor peasants as well. So Langland's style has a somber energy, an intense seriousness, and a simple way of treating his subject. Also, the form of the poem, that is Piers the Plowman, is curious. You can go and check it, and you will find that it is indeed curious in form. In 1399, after the success of his great work, he wrote another poem called Richard the Reedless. It was a poem written in protest against Richard II, who was ruling at that time. But people used to tell that the authorship is not certain. So it was not sure whether it was Langland who wrote it or some other writer wrote it. So after 1399, Langland disappeared completely from the scene, and the date of his death is also unknown. Then let us see about John Gower. So his date of birth is uncertain, but he died in 1408. He was a member of a good Kentish family, and he actively took part in politics and literary activity. His three chief works include Speculum Meditentis, Vox Clementis, Confessio Ementis. So the first work, that is Speculum Meditentis, it was written in French, Vox Clementis was written in Latin, and Confessio Ementis is written in English. His works, that is Gower's works, are noteworthy for the illustration of the unstable state of contemporary English literature. So he uses a very watery style of narrative, but sometimes it becomes brisk and competent. So Gower is known for a fluid narrative style, but sometimes in some of his works it becomes really brisk and competent, and as a result it becomes difficult for the readers to grasp what he is trying to tell. Now, after knowing about the poets of the age, other poets of the age, let us come to the prose writers. So firstly we have Sir John Mandeville. He is famous for his extraordinary book called The Voyage and Travail of Sir John Mandeville, written in 1356 in Midland dialect. So this work was originally written in French, and then it was gradually translated into Latin and then into English and other languages. This book, that is Mandeville's book, is remarkable as the first prose work in modern English, but it was only a translation at that time. We have John Wycliffe, 1320 to 84. He was the most powerful English figure of the 14th century, and his preaching in his native tongue has an immense influence on people. So he was a religious reformer. He has an interest with common people rather than with the privileged class. So Wycliffe translated the Gospels for the common people and much more of the New Testaments. His translation of the Bible was slowly copied all over England. So he was an active controversialist and he wrote many Latin books in support of his revolutionary opinions. So he was not only a religious reformer but also a revolutionary. Though his English style is not that polished, but it is pointed with a simplicity that makes it appealing widely and powerfully to the readers. So Wycliffe was a religious reformer, and because of his hard work, the common people could actually grasp the knowledge of the Bible, the New Testament, and the Gospels. That's all for today. Hope you liked the video. And if you have not watched my previous videos, I will be providing the link in the description box. Do check it. And if you like it, don't forget to share it with your friends. And that's all for today. Thank you.